Welcome to Disruption Dialogues Podcast Season 2. Listen to the influential leaders and trailblazers from around the world as they share invaluable insights to navigating the fifth industrial revolution.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Disruption Dialogue Season 2. I'm Siddharth Saha, Senior Vice President with the Healthcare Practice at MarketsandMarkets. And today I'm in conversation with Michael Coulter, Senior Vice President, Strategy and Modality Business Management at United Imaging North America. And for today's discussion is on new and innovative business approaches to enabling equitable healthcare access. And I'm excited to be talking to Mike, who brings a wealth of experience. Now, the healthcare experience has, over the past decade, witnessed some amazing innovations, be it novel diagnostic capabilities, interventional and therapeutic applications that serve difficult cases, cutting-edge analytics and decision support solutions, as well as new ways of deploying solutions. And yet we feel the end goal is miles away. The underserved population is still a large cohort across the globe. Cost of healthcare service delivery continues to spiral upwards. And some of us feel that brilliant technology on its own is not the solution. I was particularly intrigued by United Imaging's mission to bring equal healthcare for all. Mike, how would you describe United Imaging's mission and what is the firm striving to do to enable this?
Well, I think, that's a pretty big statement, a bold statement, equal healthcare for all. And it means different things in different parts of the world, quite frankly. There's parts of the world that are obvious, right? Underserved communities. But if you look at even in the US, there is a difference in healthcare in rural West, Central America, USA to Manhattan, New York, or Chicago. And we believe that at minimum, it's not enough to just say you have access to healthcare, you have an MRI, if that MRI is not equal to everywhere else that is within your, if nothing else, general geography. Now, the standard of care may be different in the US than in India. That's phase 2, if you will. But we're looking at, that standard of care in a given place should be equal for everybody. You shouldn't have to choose, do I get the advanced MRI cardiac package or the advanced neuro package? I can only afford one of the two. And so we're really looking to make that the same. We believe you should have the same healthcare in Manhattan, Kansas as you have in Manhattan, New York.
Interesting viewpoint. So are you hinting at multiple applications within? Are you loading up, is your vision to provide n number of applications on the same equipment and not make it a matter of choice, as you said, a separate solution for neuro, a separate solution for cardiology?
Right. There's always going to be some specialties, right? In academia, you're pushing the envelope in different areas. But when you really get out to those clinical systems, you have different levels of performance, right? You have maybe 1.5 Tesla MRIs or 3 Tesla MRIs, or now we've got a 5 Tesla MRI. Now, 5 Tesla is not going to be everywhere, but the real standard of care in the US at a minimum is really 1.5, for instance. And so what we do is we basically say we have an all-in configuration. And what that means is that everything we make for that piece of equipment is included in the standard configuration. I only have one part number for it. And so what ends up happening is in the other vendors, other competitors, the entire history of this industry, really it's one box that gets deconfigured and stripped down for, a rural area and over configured and fully loaded in a premium academic space. So those two systems could literally be double the cost at the academic versus the other. And that just doesn't work for reducing, the cost of healthcare. And so we've really come and said, all in, we don't believe anybody should say no to a patient again. And there's a lot of talk about democratization of healthcare and these kinds of things. But again, some healthcare, some MR and MR is not the same as equal MR or standard of care. And that's what, places are suffering with all over the country and all over the world.
Interesting viewpoint. Mike, United Imaging's products are sometimes seen to be premium, and yet various types of customer organizations, can benefit from the portfolio as seen from recent announcements. How does the firm enable such scenarios and outcomes? How are you able to serve a range of customer organizations?
Well, I think it boils down to a few different things. I mean, one, we have a full host of products, as you said. We go from, we don't enter the market with low-end products. If you take our pet, for instance, we never came with an analog system. We started at digital, which was where all the other vendors ended. And so we really, we put the first digital in El Paso, Texas, right? It's not it's an underserved community, quite frankly. And so, that's how we look at it. Now, how do we do this on a larger scale, right? I think there's a lot of different components that go into that. But really, it's because we started with a completely different business model, right? There, you can make a business model work based on a fixed margin by selling more volume, right? And that's really what the industry's done. There's big, big bureaucratic organizations with lots of people that they have to support, and they have a fixed margin, right? We took a different view, that we were new, we were fresh, bold, modern, young company, and we could do things that wouldn't, quote unquote, reduce our revenue because we had no revenue. And so in doing that, we started with a different model, and that's something that's really been very positive for us. And it really ultimately started with where we focused. We've got thousands of engineers in the company working on great technology. As I think you mentioned in your intro, that sometimes technology can kind of be for technology's sake, and we took a different view in the U.S. We said we're going to focus on what is enabling success of our providers, right? What are the providers is going to make them successful? Because quite frankly, healthcare providers, when they wake up every morning, their whole job is to make the patient successful. And so we're looking at a little bit different. It's more than a semantics tweak, but it's definitely a difference in where we focus. And so we've done things like all-in configurations, as I mentioned. We've taken it even a further step and said, if you bought a system 2 years ago, well, that system's probably not equal to what we offer today because we've come out with new things. So we had software for life, for instance. So that means every system gets all of the future software as it moves forward. Again, keeping that standard of care, keeping it equal. So that's a big piece for us.
That's interesting. I want to actually come back to the business model and some of the commitments that you talked about over here, software for life and some of the other ones. But I want to spend a minute also on your brand promise.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know that change is the one constant, and it applies across healthcare as well. New diagnostic techniques, the expansion of the pool of individuals that can be managed, demand capacity imbalances, needing to adapt to that, better therapeutic methods, resulting in obviously better outcomes at the health system level, not only at the patient level. Pathways are changing. Now, your brand promise is passion for change. Now, what does that mean for customers, users, patients? Not necessarily not order. I know we all want to keep patients as the focal point, but what does that mean for these three stakeholder groups?
Well, I think that, ultimately it boils down to where's the market been, right? And historically, everybody just kind of goes with how it's been. It's been an oligopoly. It's, the same three big players for the most part. And, they're playing by the same rules they've done for 100 years. And so what we did is we came in and questioned the status quo. That's one of my challenges, and one of the things that I focus on in the company is to make sure that everybody's really challenging the status quo both internally and externally. So what does that mean to the providers? It means that, all the way down to, we give a 3-page quote versus an 80-page quote of our competitors. It means, which takes cost out of the purchasing side of it, right? We have all-in configuration, so there's no time spent, back and forth and horse trading, if you will. All of the different little components of I can't afford this, but I want that, and that's all wasted cost, right? And so variability is waste. And, with an all-in configuration, there is no variability. So that's really changing the view of how we do things. Now, that also trickles down to the patients, to the academics, to everybody, because if you have all of the software, you can now expand your healthcare business as a provider into different areas you never could before. Because in the past, hey, I think we have a doc, we might want to do some advanced neuro. Well, that's going to cost $100,000 to put the software on, and maybe it'll pay for itself, maybe it won't. I can't take that chance, right? And with us, it's enabled us to be able to come and truly, do that and make a difference in how we do things. And I think that's a key component to that.
That's interesting. The element about variability, increasing cost, I guess, also influencing the sales cycles, and there's check boxes to tick off and negotiating. That's pretty disruptive. You're simplifying the whole acquisition process as well. Would you say, would you consider United Imaging as the Tesla of the medical imaging world?
I don't like to make those references, but sometimes you people do, and sometimes I see it as well, right? I mean, Tesla came in and rewrote the rules, right? They didn't do franchises, for instance, as other car dealers do in the U.S. They came and said that doesn't work for my model, and quite frankly, they went to Chicago, and Chicago said you have to have a franchise, and they said we won't do it. We'll put it in Indiana, and they can drive the cars over here. We've done a similar thing, right? It's a little uncomfortable for our customers sometimes, right? Because we have a different model. They say, well, everything's in there, it must be more expensive. And that's not the case. What we did is we changed the business model from the ground up to reduce cost and do that. And so, one of the things that, a perfect example of that is, how do you include everything? How do you do software for life and still make money? And I think that's a little bit of a recipe that we've got right, that because we started with zero and built it that way from the start, right? And so many things are, you make a reference to Tesla, but there's also references to Uber or to Amazon that, it wasn't really the technology that created those massive and incredibly successful brands. It was actually a new customer experience, right? It was, being able to order from home or getting a better service faster than you could with a taxi. And yes, there was an element of technology, but we really took a different approach to that to drive it forward. And it really is about saving cost everywhere that we can.
Since we're talking about cost, Mike, I want to come back to the business model question, and I will ask. There'll be a side question on profitability, because you seem to be giving quite a lot and making a lot of commitments. Now, United Imaging is a relatively new player in the sector compared to some of the incumbents, in the industry. You've got a broad portfolio of premium products. How are you looking to change the customer experience as well? And the reason I ask this is you talked a little bit about your internal, starting with a blank slate, no baggage, you've got a certain amount of freedom, and you wrote the rules of engagement, your business model, right? But what does this mean for customers? Because you've got, ownership experience, commitments that you give in contracts. So can you tell us a little bit on what does this mean externally for those customer groups?
Yeah, I think it boils down to, quite frankly, customers are getting what they've always wished they could get. I mentioned earlier, variability is waste, and that's a nice little tagline, if you will. But, variability in hospitals is where all of the cost is. If Dr. A is doing 12 exams to Dr. B doing 2, and they're getting the same outcomes, Dr. A is costing a lot more, right? If I have to send a patient, to other locations, if I have to triage all of my different exams as to which system they go on, because not all of the systems have all of the software, for instance, that's all waste, that's all cost. So the entire experience is different when you put in a system that's completely configured, right? You never have to triage. The doctors can order the exact same exam on every single location, every single system. It changes everything. When you have software for life that keeps them all at the same, right? Because often, even if you buy 5 the same, and then over time, some get upgraded, some don't, you're this disparity. And so it really trickles into everything that the customer does, from scheduling to ordering to, how fast they can get a report, whether they're getting the right things for their specialty readers. It really encompasses everything, all the way, as I mentioned, down to the service people, right? If the hospital does their own service, all of our systems are on the same platform because they're constantly upgraded. So they don't have to. They get a new service guy. They don't have to teach him, 4 different platforms back. He doesn't have to know that. And so it just really, it's something that customers are kind of takes a little bit to get their head around, because it really does impact everything that they do, all the way from purchasing, service, all the way to the tech, the patient, the doctor, everyone.
Okay. And any specific value enhancers that you strive to provide, commitments, guarantees? Are you doing something different from that point of view as well?
Yeah, I mean, we touch pretty much every piece. I mean, we talked about some of these big ones. I mean, we do things like, we do things like a same day, next day parts, right? We have 24 stocking locations across the country. We back them up in Houston. So all of our parts are in country for any given system. So this is healthcare. You can't have downtime, things like that. We do a performance guarantee, for instance, that goes above and beyond any of the performance guarantees that are in the industry, and we call it United Performance Guarantee. And what it says is, we can calculate what you paid for a given system, basically down to the minute or the second if we wanted, but we look at it on an hourly basis. And in short, when you call and say, hey, my system's down for whatever reason, the clock starts. When it comes up, the clock ends. And we will refund the customer the money that they paid us for that system for that time. So we're really stepping up to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place, parts in, close by, service people close by, that we can get that system back up as fast as possible. It is healthcare, that's important. We make those kinds of things. We look at, the architect that's building the place, helping design the place. That was always a back and forth of the drawings, back and forth of the design. We took all of that out by doing live planning sessions. So we get all of the players, from the architect to the service to the tech to the doctor to the radiology manager to whoever, on one call. We all sit down and say, put this here, put the cabinet over there, the printer over there. And we found that what that does is, A, we get a better outcome because everybody's working collaboratively, but B, we save a ton of cost on architect fees just with all of the hourly back and forths. So it's really looking at kind of every piece and every nuance and say, how can this be better?
Yeah.
And that really does transition to, quite frankly, elated customers. On a global scale, we sell twice as many systems as we have customers. That means every customer's, on average, bought more than one system. In the US, that number is actually even higher. It's over 4 to 1. And that being the case, that tells you that the buyer experience has been something new, something better. Because if we didn't keep the promise, if we didn't deliver on what we're trying to do, they wouldn't come back for more. And they simply are. From everybody from the average customer to the biggest academics, right? We've got a very, very good who's who of academics in the US that are already on our product and continuing to buy more.
Outstanding. And I agree with the element of design and workflow. Sometimes it's so underestimated, the difference that it can make. So clearly you've got that angle covered. But I want to come back to, the software for life, performance guarantees, and you talked about money back for downtime, and you're giving a lot of guarantees, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing this? I mean, are certain parts of your business being subsidized, or is it just sound business practices in the model, and you've weeded away inefficiencies within your business? I mean, how are you getting away with this?
Yeah, I think you're hitting at the core of it, right? It is a different model. I wouldn't say it's a good execution of the model because it's a model that most haven't done, right? But I can probably the easiest way to answer it is with a little bit of an example, right? If I look at our competitors for let's say CT, a CAT scan, they probably have 1,000 to 3,000 part numbers in their price book, okay? Because everything's a la carte, right? I don't have that. I have 8 part numbers in my CT portfolio because everything's included in each one. So do you want a 20 slice, a 40 slice, an 80, a 128, 160? Do you want a 640 slice? Do you want a workstation? And do you want intervention? I've got 8 part numbers. Now, what does that mean? Okay, that means very easy to train my sales force. They don't have to know 1,000 part numbers to configure a quote. It means that I don't have to have huge product management teams to manage the price book. I don't have to have regulatory behind them to make sure it's all compliant. When it goes to my factory is more effective and efficient because they make one configuration. If I had 30 orders of bespoke systems, I'd have 30 systems sitting in my factory waiting for supply chain of COVID or contractors to finish construction. I don't have that. I have 3. The next one off the line is can go to the next customer. So that keeps my real estate costs down. That keeps my taxes down for property tax. All of those things, when I look at my service people, more effective, more efficient, as I mentioned earlier, because I don't have to train them on all of my old platforms. They're on the latest and greatest. My applications, it really trickles into every single aspect of what we do to take the cost out. And this is something why I say, a fresh, bold, modern company, it's going to be extremely difficult for any existing company to get there because, it's a complete revamp. There's, Harvard Business Reviews of low-cost airlines versus premium airlines or low-cost grocery store chains like Aldi against the big, premium brand chains. It's a different model. If the premiums try to compete with it, they will, quite frankly, bankrupt themselves trying to do it because it's just simply a different model. And that's what we've done here. And so it's super exciting. The interesting thing is I often hear a little bit of what you're saying, which is, well, that's maybe too good to be true. How are you going to do that? And what's good is the worst time for me in this model was at the beginning. It's when I had to hire all the service people and put all those parts in place and build the factories. Now I get all the scale in the future. When I sell more systems, I already have a service guy there. I already have parts for that system there. I don't have to duplicate now. My factory's built. We're actually going to build another more than 1 million square foot factory in Houston. We're looking for land right now because we're outgrowing our factory already. And so there's these kinds of things that now I'm going to get the benefit. The tough times still a little lean, right? But the tough times are mostly behind us. It's only going to get better.
Interesting. And I noticed low-cost model referred to the low-cost processes. You reiterated that the products are still premium. It's the low-cost and efficient business model that is allowing for these kinds of commitments.
100%.
Imaging.
100%. There's sunk cost into all of the R&D. There's sunk cost into those things. It's no secret. Pretty much every manufacturer puts everything into every box that goes out. They just turn on keys, they turn off keys. The hardware's there. The sunk costs are there for everybody, but we have a different model of how we execute on that. And we are definitely at the premium side of the market. We outspec everybody else, but we do it at a price that's basically below the market average. And it's all about taking the money, taking the cost out outside of the box, right? So if you use the Tesla example, Tesla has a certain cost in that car, but what can they do to take the cost out everywhere else outside of the car? So you can offer that premium product at a average price or below, and that's really the model. Because if we took it out of the box itself, if we took it out of the product, we wouldn't be that premium brand. We wouldn't be able to uphold that technology. We invest more in R&D. I mean, there's things out there on the internet you can find pretty easily. We invest more in R&D than any other company in our space, and we have a higher profitability than any other company in our space. Those two don't normally go together. There has to be some secret sauce and a different business model to make that happen. And we do it through automation. We do it through changing the business practices, the business models, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely something to be learned from, the approach that United Imaging has taken. And I want to get to another question. Bringing equal healthcare for all, it's not something that you can do overnight. This is actually the long game, and you talked about a lot of commitments. My next question is, how's the firm ensuring that you have a resilient and a long-term business model, right? This is not something that you're trying to show and achieve over 2-5 years. This has to be the long game.
Yeah.
So how is United Imaging,
Well, I think
planning to sustain this?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I mean, we're a healthcare company. We don't make jet engines. We don't make trains and windmills. We make healthcare, and so in doing so, one of the things that we've done is we built this imaging business. We did an IPO back about a year and a half ago in 2022. We IPO'd for over $22 billion. That IPO came out higher than some of our competitors. I won't name names, but right in line with companies that have been around for over 100 years, higher than some of them. And so that gives us the capital, that gives us the backing to play the long game. But what does that long game mean? We actually have 7 additional companies. We have United Imaging Intelligence (UII) that has over 700 AI engineers. Based in the US and in other parts of the world. And that company is building the AI to support not only United Imaging, but other companies. We have a company that does surgical robots and wearables. We have a company that's building our chips because, quite frankly, the chips that we need weren't out in the market. And so, I mean, our latest Panorama PET scanner is using our own ASICS chip. And in doing so, it broke the 200 picosecond time barrier for the first time ever. And that's enabled by our own chip. We have other parts of the organization that are focused on different things because we have an absolute vision of changing healthcare outside of radiology, beyond radiology, and beyond, this idea of equal health, as we said. Equal health is kind of right now, the first goal is making it standard of care in a given place. But over time, I'd like to see Brazil, India, any of these other, BRIC countries, developing countries, be at the same standard of care that we have in New York City, right? That's the long-term play, but that's going to take a lot of additional work and working outside of just radiology. But we have a vision. We're executing on that vision, and exciting things to come. I mean, right now we have three more entire modalities coming to the US in the next 24 months. I won't go into what those are, but 3 completely different new modalities. And as I said, right behind it, there's surgical robots, there's wearables, there's a lot of other interesting things, and the foundation behind it with things like AI companies and chip companies to enable all of that. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Exciting times for sure. It seems like that. It's clear the firm has some very big ambitions. Lots of innovative approaches. Your business model, and obviously the quantum of fixing that needs to be done to the healthcare industry is huge. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and there's ample room, right, to make that difference. So my final question is, what's your view of the future, for the future of the industry and for United Imaging as a company?
Well, I think the industry is going through a lot of change. I think it's not to be too I don't want to be boastful, but I think that we are making an impact. We're changing. We see some of our competitors trying to maneuver and get closer to where we're at, which is only going to help all of our customers and all of our patients. That's only going to be a positive. I think that we will continue to drive that forward in the industry. For United Healthcare, I was just with a very prominent customer yesterday, and they said what's obviously unique and different about you guys is you came in and you really hired the best. You hired people that think differently. You hired the rock stars of the industry. You invested into that, and then you let them go do what they always wanted to do and thought they could be able to do at the other places. And that's really making an impact. So we'll continue to do that. It's focused on people. It's focused on people who think differently. As Steve Jobs called it, the crazies. But we're definitely the crazies. We want to go do this. We want to make a change. We want to leave a legacy. And so that's where I think the future of United will be. We've done amazing things, but we're not done. As much crazy success and growth as we've had, which has exceeded anybody in the industry. Any market entrant into the U.S. has never done it to the level we have already. We're not done. We're not done. We've got a lot more to do. And I love having these kind of conversations. I appreciate the invite here, especially to talk outside of our industry, right? You can be in a little bit of an echo chamber and within an industry, and I think that's part of where the industry's been. Right, that's why it hasn't changed. You get the same people talking to the same people, and take some fresh blood from outside, some fresh ideas, and that's what we're trying to provide. So that's kind of, I believe, where we're going. So hang on, there's going to be more.
That's some golden words over there. Very interesting. You gave away a little bit about the culture and the people that obviously form one of the most important pillars, of any organization. Thank you for that. On that positive note, I would like to thank Michael Coulter for spending time with us on this disruption dialogue. Thank you, Michael, for this interesting discussion. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. I was in conversation with Michael Coulter, Senior Vice President, Strategy and Modality Business Management at United Imaging North America. Thank you, Michael, once again. And stay tuned for such interesting disruption dialogues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to know how you can navigate and thrive in this disruptive era, subscribe to Disruption Dialogues on your go-to podcast channels and stay tuned for more interesting episodes.